Purpose Highway is a space for discussions that drive connections toward people's highest purpose to build a better self and a better world. Join me for Season 1, where I start to uncover stories of entrepreneurs and thinkers that are making an impact. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and enjoy today's episode. Welcome, my guests. This is Scott Mason, host of Scott Mason's Argonauts podcast. It is good to have you back for our newest episode. We have with us in the house today the one and only Martin Cowart. He is a prosperity coach and spiritual teacher. He uses spiritual principles, truth, and wisdom to help folks, or actually to empower folks to build wealth. And he is one of a kind. I'm excited to have you here today, Martin. I know this conversation is going to be extraordinary.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to sharing my story with you.
Well, thank you very much for coming. One of the things that is interesting about life, and our lives together in particular, is that we actually knew each other long before that we knew each other. Decades ago, we knew each other, but we didn't know each other yet. What on earth do I mean when I'm saying that? And talk to us a little bit about that and how it dovetails to the mission that you live so vibrantly every day.
That's an interesting question. Will you frame that? Well, we know each other from the years back before 2001, when I had a cafe in Lower Manhattan called the Bassett Cafe Company. And you used to come in, I think you were a law student at New York Law School around the corner. And I remember you coming in, and you were a customer of mine, and you came in fairly regularly, like a lot of New York law students, to drink coffee and study. And I didn't know you and I would become friends until much, much later. But you were someone that I always enjoyed having in my cafe.
Let me tell you, I enjoyed being there too. And I love by the way, that you said that I was a law student. That means I looked younger than I actually was. Keep saying that over and over again. I love it.
You were a wonderful law student. You were a customer and a welcome member. We always welcome in our shop. So thank you for coming. And I think what you're talking about is we never know. We're always connected through something. And I love the way Eckhart Tolle frames it. As human beings, there are many humans. There is only one being, and we're all connected. And we get disconnected from that being sometimes. And the only thing that can disconnect you from your being, or you might call it the divine. I'm going to use the word infinite intelligence today, because that's really a word that I use a lot in my coaching practice, because it's a word that comes out of Napoleon Hill's famous book, Think and Grow Rich. He talks about infinite intelligence. And that's exactly the kind of principles I'm talking about when I say as a prosperity coach, I teach people how to use those principles, those spiritual principles and truths to solve problems and create wealth. And that's just from my own personal experience of struggle and darkness and difficulty, that I was trying to solve those problems at the same level of consciousness that created them, which is impossible. So that's what I do. But I was going to go back and say that infinite intelligence, that we're all connected into that, if we're willing to let go of our egoic beliefs that we're not. Because we can't be disconnected from that, because it's who we are. But we can believe we are. And those are exactly the limiting beliefs of our egoic mind that keep us separated from ourselves and from each other and from the world.
Egoic mind, $5 word, man. What does it mean? To me, egotism is all just about when everything is about me, 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 me. I'm a loving person. I give to people all. What makes you think that I have an egoistic mind, or an egoism mind, or whatever that word was?
Well, the world is ego. The ego is a good thing. It's not, we give the ego a bad name. The ego is simply the construction of the human mind to create a persona in the world. And unfortunately, it's typically negative, but that's not bad, because if it's negative and it's shadow, comes out of shadow, the ego protects an identification with something to get to get my individual needs met. That's why it's often considered narcissistic, but it doesn't have to be. It's when we lose awareness to it. Let's just say something as simple as, let's say I define myself as an introvert.
Yeah.
I'm an introvert. Well, the minute I define myself as an introvert, I have already limited I can't be Martin as an authentic introvert, because I am living into my egoic mind's identification of what an introvert is supposed to be. Maybe it's supposed to be somebody who's shy, who's afraid of people and insecure. So I begin to live into that type of identification. That's my ego. It is because I need something. Maybe I need to be a victim. Maybe I need to do something. Often it is the victim. So the ego is a construction out of our binary brain to get its needs met, for the human being to get its needs met.
Right, right.
And we get stuck in that. And for example, one of the biggest ones that I work with my client, with my coaching clients, is the imposter syndrome. And I don't know if you've ever experienced that yourself, but the imposter syndrome is something that happens to typically the more successful you are, the louder the voice. And then what that does, it tells you that, and this is a favorite fuel, a favorite weapon, if you will, of the ego. Of the ego is mine. And that's to say, okay, how did you get here, Martin? You're not worthy. You don't deserve to be in this fancy office. You don't deserve this success. You're a fraud, and people are going to find out about you. And then you go around being afraid that people are going to find out you're a fraud, because we begin to believe, and we believe that's true. We begin to believe that we live into the identification of the egoic structure. How we solve that is we go deeper inside ourselves. And I believe, and what I teach is a principle, is what I call contemplative prayer and meditation. And that is where we get still and we go inside ourselves and we surrender, with intention, we surrender the beliefs of the egoic mind. We say, I don't know how to, I'm broken. I don't know how to get out of this mess. Let's just call it that. We'll make it simple. I have bills to pay. I'm not making any money. I don't know how to get this out. So we have to get to another level of consciousness to get there. How do we do that? Well, I'm big proponent of contemplative prayer and centering prayer, where I go in and I get quiet, I get centered, and I will set an intention to let go and say, I don't know how to do this. I'm lost. I have done everything I can do to try to get out, to resolve this problem about my money. And I am about to go into bankruptcy and I'm scared. And so we with ourselves and we surrender to a higher part of ourselves, a higher level of consciousness. We'll call it the infinite intelligence, the God self. We all have that dimension. Some of us are aware of it, some of us are not. This is what this is all about. That's the journey of life. It's really about learning to love yourself fully. So if I get quiet and say, I really love myself and I love my life, and I've got to let go of this painful belief that I'm not worthy or whatever it is, and ask for some direction. And when I do that, at least it's been for me, and it happened, I was in real darkness when I did that. The minute, this is going to sound cheesy, but the minute I surrender, this is the first step in 12-step, by the way. The minute I surrender and say, life is unmanageable, I don't know how to do this. God help me. I'm not asking him to do something for me other than to come into my life and love and support me. All of a sudden, for me, for example, when I had this happen 2 years ago, this is why I got this place, I felt almost like this descendance of love and grace and joy and peace that came over me like I have never experienced in my life. And it took over like a sense of peaceful power within me that I haven't felt since I was a little boy.
Talk to me a little bit about that journey, because I think that one of the things that gives what you are talking about true power is what you've just mentioned in passing. It was something you've experienced yourself. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're exactly right. We're born with it.
Yeah.
We are born 360 degrees of radiant love, light, energy. We're curious. We want to see the world. It's an adventure. And then we begin to learn as children, there's something wrong with us, that we're not quite right the way we are. There's something other people have that we don't have. And so we begin to put up barriers to protect ourselves. We create a false identification in order to fit in. So it's called the ego. The ego begins to say, I want to fit in. I want to be a member. I want people to like me. I want to be popular. I want to be
right.
So I begin to create a perception of me. I begin to create a concept of what I believe will make me likable. And for me, it was like I learned at an early age that to be lovable, I needed to be rich and successful.
Right.
So I had to live into what I believed a rich and successful person was to be loved.
Well, it's interesting, though, because when I first met you, and based on the history that you had professionally, that is very much what you were living. You were a financial advisor. I worked with you. I will never forget going to your office the very first time on Park Avenue, taking this elevator up. I felt poor just stepping onto those marble floors. And then there you sat in this gigantic conference room with these lush chairs and windows looking all over every river in Manhattan and skyscrapers everywhere. And so to me, my eyes, you were living everything that anyone who wanted to experience what you just described was living.
Exactly.
What changed?
That's a wonderful question, because what you saw was what my ego wanted you to see.
It worked.
I wanted you to see me as a successful. I wanted you to see me as a person of importance for a lot of reasons. One, so you could trust me and think I knew what I was doing. But more than that, at that time for me, I know what you're talking about. For me, it was like that's how I looked to the outside world. I looked the part. I was a successful man that my mother would love.
Yeah.
The problem is, internally, I was so afraid. I was terrified of money and success.
Amazing.
I was terrified. And I believe my imposter syndrome was so large, it came so loud that our business actually began to fail. Good for good reason, because it pushed me into the place of darkness where I had to find the truth of who I was and became what I am today. But so I can share that with you, but that's the truth. What you saw from the outside looking in was what I wanted you to see, what my ego wanted you to see.
Yeah.
It wasn't how I was but internally I was feeling lost, afraid, alone, and like an imposter.
How do you recognize if you have imposter syndrome? Like if I'm someone listening to this and I'm climbing up the ladder, or I'm feeling anxiety inside as I become more successful, how do I know that it's that as opposed to some other issue that might be going on in my life?
Because the ego is always a pessimist. By its nature, it is the shadow. It is the flip side of creativity. So if you're thinking a thought into the future that's fear-driven, I can promise you it's coming from your ego. So if it's you always know the difference between, how do you feel when you think that thought? If you think, oh my God, if I don't make this deal happen, I'm not going to make enough money. I'm not going to be able, all this pessimistic story we just make up based on whatever's going on.
Yeah.
But if I begin to feel into that thought and begin to live into that, that's going to be what I'm going to create tomorrow. I'm going to begin to live into, and that's what the world's done, by the way. That's why we live in such a toxic environment today, because we've been out of balance with the male egotistical need for dominance and control. Fortunately, we're getting some balance, what I call the divine feminines coming in and nurturing us back through and helping us see the truth about who we are and what we're about. But that if you're feeling, it doesn't have to be called, you don't have to call, it's just what we call it imposter. It could be anything. But anytime you're feeling a sense of fear about the future, you can be rest assured it is not coming from your heart. The heart is always, always, always encouraging and powerful and wanting you to be. It's the creator. Right. You and I are creators.
Right.
We are by nature creators. So we want to create, we want to encourage, and that's why I have my noonday show of love and support. We want to love and support each other through all this drama so that you know that you're loved and supported and you can be creative.
On some level, you had to figure out as you transitioned from the life that I first met you in into the space that you're in now. And as you began that journey, which I know has been multi-layered and really fascinating. But at some point you had to say to yourself, okay, this method, meditative prayer or surrender, is going to at least possibly help me move forward in my path. How did you come to understand that that was the right tool for you? And what was it like when you began to do that? How did it feel? If you're telling me, Scott, this might be something you want to try because you're feeling stress around your finances, what will I go through?
That's a beautiful question. So when you met me and I was in all that darkness, turmoil, I actually I had a friend of mine who was an attorney, and he's a bankruptcy attorney. He said, Martin, you might want to consider bankruptcy. You know, I had a lot of debt and I couldn't pay my bills. It was that classic story.
Wow.
And so the more I worried about it, the more obsessed over it, the more fear I had, the less clients I had, and the worse my business got. And that sounded pretty tempting. I could declare bankruptcy, and all of a sudden that would be an external solution. But my therapist and spiritual teacher said to me, Martin, you know what to do, contemplative prayer. And I was like, oh, no. I can do contemplative prayer and I can do meditation. Those are fine for things like alcoholism and other problems. Take care of my money, my bank account. I'm going to take care of that myself because I know what I need to be important. I know what I need to be successful. I'm not giving that to God, for God's sake. I was stuck in my... That's what the ego was. That was my ego saying, you're not giving this up. I have life cultivating you to be important.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, but the problem was it got so painful and I got so afraid that finally I listened to her advice. And I did go inside myself. And that's where I go back to that story. I was in there and I finally said, I don't know how to do this. I'm scared. I literally was in so much pain internally, emotionally pain, that I just surrendered it. And that's when I had that epiphany moment, when I felt that, I can say it sounds a little cheesy, but it really literally all of a sudden it was like a sense of warm love. This came into my body and I felt
wow.
That I was like, oh wow. And I remember the voice, the words that came into my head was, Martin, none of this stuff that you worry about matters. It doesn't matter if you get certified in the Mankind Project that I was trying to get done and I wouldn't get anywhere there. It doesn't matter if you make a lot of money. It doesn't matter if you're successful. Nothing you think matters. The only thing that matters, Martin, the only thing that matters, and all you have to do from now until the rest of your life, and I've been living by this, is to show up with love and gratitude, and I will do the rest. And I'm not talking about I, Martin. I'm talking about I, the big I.
Right.
I'm talking about what I now call Joy, the wise woman in me.
Right.
And I have been developing and culturing, and I put out a course this summer, and I just released it. It's called Practicing the Art of Being Present, Your Keys to Living a Life of Love, Joy, and your keys to love, joy, and prosperity. And I'm going to tell you a story about how I created that.
Yeah.
I started it because my clients wanted me to show them how to meditate. Well, how do you meditate? Well, how do you do it?
Yeah.
I'll just put together a little video and I'll show you how to do it. Well, I started putting together that video. And the more I was beginning to create it, it began to take on a life of its own. Because I began to practice more and more what I was going to be teaching. I taught it, the more I was practicing it, the more I was being present. and then all of a sudden Joy, who I call the Joy, the wise woman, that present, she got involved. It turned into this amazing webinar that I put out over the summer, and it evolved into its own teaching thing. But the great thing is this: by the end of the summer, I got to tell you now, I live in presence most of the time, and I'm aware that I am living I do live with love, joy, and prosperity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It works. And I've been giving it, I gave it to some of my friends and stuff to try out, because I just released it on mastermind.com for $97. But I was giving it to friends, and it was like, somebody said, I watched your video. It was like more than just reading something. It actually, I was feeling something inside me as I was listening to it. That's where it came from.
Yeah. Well, Martin, talk to me a little bit about, after engaging in this process, how did it change your life externally? And do you look back on the old life that you had before in a way different than you might have had you not gone through this process?
Well, I look back at my life now at all those things that I thought were against me as wonderful, wonderful lessons to learn. So that whole toxic environment that you saw me in, that was so painful in that big firm and that big office and all, wow, what I learned from that. So no regrets. It's really about, we need to go through some difficult, challenging times to get to the truth of who we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't look back at that and say, oh my, I wish I had done. I don't regret anything. Everything had to happen to get me to where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as you ask me, where am I today? I'm a person that I would say I am present to the divine within me. I would consider myself a mystic, which simply means that I've gone from being a place of just believing and belonging to actually understanding and living with the presence of God within me. That's within you, that drives it. I get out of the way and allow that to. I took her words literally. I show up with love and gratitude and allow that presence to run my day, because she's running it anyway. She's running yours, as a matter of fact. That's what acceptance is. The ego wants to resist that. It wants to control us. But when we surrender that and say, no, I'm going to surrender it. I'm going to completely surrender through a practice. And I have something that I teach in my practice about what I call a morning power hour, where I power up every day by bringing this presence into my life. Because I can tell you, when we get the presence in our lives, like when I drive out of the driveway, so what in presence is driving the bus, it's a lot harder for my ego to get the keys back.
Yeah. One of the things I've got to ask, though, is I can imagine a listener saying to themselves, well, you were a fancy schmancy financial advisor. You had this whole financial background. You're an entrepreneur. You are in the driver's seat of your own life. One of the things, Martin, that I feel so passionately about, as you know, is that the cultural and economic model that we're living in right now, particularly as they intertwine, and you referenced earlier when you were talking, has really put us in a position as a people where so many folks feel like they are not drivers financially, and to then, going from there into a whole other set of spaces in their lives at all. And so they might be saying, I am just such a cog in the wheel that I could meditate all I want, I could contemplate all I want, I could do all of these other things, but I'm still always going to be a truck driver, or I am always, not that there's anything wrong with it, but maybe that's not where they want to be, or I'm always in this coal mining job where in a state that I live in where coal mining is going away, or I am always going to be sort of stuck in the bottom of the totem pole financially. And if I get fired tomorrow because my wife has a long-term illness, or because I have chronic injuries that due to my work that I don't see getting better anytime soon, I don't have the luxury to sit around like you're talking about and go through and do all these fancy schmancy New York, New Jersey, East Coast liberal elite sort of exercises. What do you say to those folks?
First of all, the illusion that you gave that I had all these fancy things. I was on the verge of bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the verge of I'm not lying. I was on the verge of bankruptcy. I had the tax collectors coming at me.
Yeah.
I was.
Folks can find that hard to believe, and I think that's important to get that out and share with folks.
Well, that's the point. That's why my story, I think, is so good, because I understand what it's like to be in those positions that you're miserable about.
Yeah. Because
you're living up to somebody's expectation. This is the core spiritual principle. And I'm a Christian mystic. I'm a Christian contemporary, and I listen to the teachings of Jesus like I listen to the teachings of Buddha. Two things. One, Jesus did not teach a belief system. He taught quite the opposite. And what happened was, to our detriment, is the men in the world took Jesus's teaching and created this very patriarchal, sort of egotistical empire called the church. Mm-hmm. Which has done nothing but damage the world since the beginning of time. And I'm not talking about all that. I'm just acknowledging that, and that's kind of how we got here. But I'm talking about the one thing he told us to do. Jesus, as he said, love your Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't tell us that as a suggestion to get ahead in life. He commanded it. And if we live by that one commandment, and he also, that's it. That's all you have to do. And it's anything else that is coming from the ego. That is a commandment from the creator of the universe. If you want to live a good life and you want to live a happy, fulfilling life, you want to live a life of love, joy, then you have to learn to love yourself and love your neighbor.
It goes as just something I really feel cannot be reinforced enough, which is that every single person matters. I went through large periods of my life where I felt I didn't matter. And I know a lot of people that feel that way. What I'm hearing is that you want your message, or am I hearing it correctly? You want your message to resonate that way with people, that it's all tied together.
Yeah, that idea doesn't matter. We have bought into a belief that we somehow don't matter. And then it gets reinforced by political opinion, news on the radio. And so we begin to believe we don't matter. Yeah. That is the ego. That's exactly the false self. And Jesus was pretty smart. He said, well, then we attack ourselves. Times are going to be tough, and you're going to think you don't matter. But I'm telling you, you do. And you've got to start with loving yourself first. You got to go inside and you got to practice that, because it's not going to come easy, particularly growing up in a producer-consumer environment that we all grew up in.
Yeah.
And because we think that's what matters. Because that's what we were taught, and that's almost gotten ingrained, and that's a painful way to live. But when we actually go inside ourselves and we, through inquiry, say, is it true I don't matter? If we don't believe we matter, no one else is going to believe. That's what I mean about
absolutely.
Got to know in our deepest bones that it doesn't matter what I do, as long as I have an attitude of love and gratitude, that there is a power deeper within all of us. And once you discover that dimension, you cannot unrealize it. Not everybody's aware they even have that dimension in them, which is why I put together this 90-day challenge to help people say, okay, if you'll do this for 90 days, you will become aware that there's a power bigger than you think there is inside you, that will begin to, and you'll have a lot more fun in life. Because God didn't make you to be suffering, to have a good time. He made this wonderful, great big universe, and made these incredibly remarkable humans, all connected to the same being. But we've ignored it. We've said, oh no, we don't like what you've created. We don't like each other. We're gonna. I kind of think this COVID-19 is like a big slap from the Divine Mother to say, okay, I've made all these wonderful people. I've made all this beautiful universe, and all y'all have done is complain and fight and bellyache. Everybody go to your room. You're not going to come out, and you can be grateful for what you have, and you can love each other.
Well, if that was the purpose of it, then I at least can consider myself
I can think of
banked.
as creators, we can make up any story we want to.
We can. And I've got to say, Martin, that story is one that has ended this with a bang. I love it. I want you to spend a few minutes just telling us a little bit about what you do. You've mentioned your course. Talk about anything else that you have going on. You mentioned that you have this meditation hour. Where is that? Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I'm doing all sorts of exciting because I have to share this. I'll tell you what's interesting. Once we realize who and what we are, I know you're experiencing it. You and I talk about this, but once you know who you are, your purpose comes out, and you have to share it. I cannot share, or I'll lose it.
Well, then share, because people are listening. People's ears are to the headphones, brother.
One of the things that I do every day is at noon, I do a live broadcast on Facebook Live called Noonday Meditations and Contemplative Prayer Power Hour, where it's a refuge, if you will, from all the drama in the world, where we come together to just love and support each other and hear our stories.
It's a beautiful thing.
That's all there is. It's a meditation. All you do is go to Martin Cowart's Facebook page at noon, and there I am. I've also got a private group called the Financial Mystic Sanctuary that's on Facebook that you can welcome to join. You just come on and ask me to join, and I'll let you come in. I'd be happy to have you, where all that stuff is posted. I'm a prosperity coach, so I'm always happy to work with people on a one-on-one basis to help them with this. I'm about to launch I just launched a webinar. I've got about 4 courses that are coming out in the next 2 or 3 weeks that Beautiful. I'm excited about. Some group coaching. I'm going to be doing a group coaching starting in October that I'm excited about. That would be a great way to work with me. And if my rates for personal coaching might be a little too high for you, then there's a great way to do it and get very similar, if not maybe even better. I think we get a lot more accomplished sometimes when we're in groups. But those are the ways you can do it. And the easiest way to contact me is just to go to my Facebook group and send me a message. Say, I'd like to meet you.
All right. I think people might. And by the way, I can personally say the meeting you is one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So I wholeheartedly endorse that approach.
Well, that's how we do. We share our stories with each other, and that's how we heal, and that's how we grow, and that's how we transform this planet. And we're in a movement right now, Scott, and you're part of it. And know this for a fact. We are in a movement to create what Eckhart Tolle calls a new earth. And that is an earth where as all these old toxic economic social structures implode upon their own pain, we are right now in this moment, you and I are doing this. We are creating a new earth, a new way, and grounded in love and truth and honesty and empathy. And that's exciting.
Yeah, it truly is. Martin Cowart, it has been amazing talking to you. Thank you for coming on Scott Mason's Argonauts podcast. Everyone, we will see you at the next episode. Reach out to Martin. It's been good talking.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Join our community today at purposehighway.com and subscribe to get notified when new episodes go live. Scott Mason, checking out.